Hi, I'm going to demonstrate the spreadsheet that I discussed in the lecture outline, the one that uses multiple worksheets. So let me give you a quick overview of what's going on here. Number one, if you take a look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that I am using several sheets and that I've renamed them by right-clicking and choosing the rename option. So I've got sheet shift 1, sheet shift 2, sheet shift 3, and a summary sheet. And what I'm modeling here is output from three different machines, fictitious machines, machine 1, machine 2, machine 3, and I'm pretending that I'm collecting data throughout the month of August, and more specifically on the weekdays, not weekends. This operation only occurs on weekdays, but I'm collecting the data output from three different machines for every weekday in the month of August in the year 2013. So I do that for shift 1, shift 2, and shift 3, and then I've provided a summary sheet and I've included the column headings, but I haven't filled any of the details, and you're going to have to aggregate the data that's in the first three sheets, or the sheets for shift 1, shift 2, and shift 3. Okay, so we're pretending that we have machines that are producing output and scrap. So um, you might, wonder, how am I going to figure out what the weekdays are in the month of August 2013? Well, if you're using a computer with a Windows operating system, you can always go down and click on the time, and it'll bring up a calendar, and you can get to the month of August and sit there and type all those weekdays in yourself. So that's going to be tedious. It's going to be time consuming. It's going to be error prone, and it's really not a good way to do it. So let me show you how I did it, and we're going to use the fill tool that I discussed in a previous lecture, and I'm going to set things up to do that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that I'm doing this, from the very beginning. I would type in the first cell date value, which would be 8/1/2013. Then these dates that are in the rows below that would not exist. So let me make them not exist. I'm going to click on the value in cell A6, and then I'm going to drag down with the mouse and highlight. Now I'm not dragging by the fill handle, I'm just dragging down across the cells. So I've highlighted all the rows beyond row 5 in column A. And the next thing I'm going to do is go over to the editing ribbon on the home page, find the clear button. You'll like this one. And I've got several different clear options. Clear all does what it sounds like. It's going to completely obliterate anything that's in the cell, formats any kind of contents. That's the one I'm going to choose. Other options that I have, though, and although I'm not going to use them this time around, they're good options to know about. I have the ability to leave the contents, but just remove any kind of special effects, any bold print or that kind of thing. I have the ability to remove comments. I'll show you how to make comments. I have the ability to remove contents. Contents only would be where I want to leave the formatting effects, but I want to remove the actual contents. And then, of course, if I have hyperlinks, I can choose this option and remove the hyperlinks as well. So let me choose the clear all option. That's the nuclear strike on this, and everything is cleared out. So we're going to pretend we're at a point in time where I've just typed this in. My objective is to now put in the dates that correspond with all the weekdays throughout the month of August. So the easy way to do this is type in the initial first day of the month, and then not on the fill handle, but just drag down through the cells. So I'm dragging down from A6 through A26. And then I'm going to go back to the editing ribbon. This time I'm going to choose the fill tool, and the fill series option. And when I do, because of the way I highlighted the cells down the column, it knows that I want to affect the column values. And because it finds the first item to be a date, it recognizes I'm working with a date. It's going to suggest a week, or it's going to suggest days of the week, all 7 days of the week. To fill the series in that format, I'm going to choose weekdays, so it only fills the dates that correspond with Mondays through Fridays. And so after I've made those selections, I click the OK button, and there we have it. So if you know how to use that feature, it's very, very handy and it can be a real time saver. I mentioned comments a moment ago. Let me just very quickly show you how that works. Um, I use these occasionally. Uh, Very, very handy to use. I probably should use them more often than what I do. Sometimes you'll store things in a spreadsheet. Maybe you have a value that's kind of exceptional. You know, where I see this a lot is as I'm recording grades in a grade sheet, and maybe someone comes in and says, "Hey, I missed the quiz on Friday because I had a temperature of 212 or something, and just couldn't bear the thought of coming to class." And I say, don't worry about it. I'll just excuse that. So I might want to then go to that cell so that I'm reminded 6 weeks from now, after a lot of things have occurred, why I excused them, and I might just put in a comment: student was very, very sick, temperature 212. And then if there's any question at some point in time, that hopefully will jog my memory. So how would I do that? If I were going to put a comment, say for instance in cell A3 where I have this heading, date, weekdays, then I might just right click on that cell, choose insert comment, and I'll just put this is a comment and click elsewhere, and you'll notice that it marks that cell. And then at any point in time in the future, if I mouse over that cell, the comment will display, otherwise it stays hidden. So you know how to create a comment, you know how to view a comment, and you know how to clear a comment. So if you don't use comments, that's your own choice from this point on. All right, what else do I need to show you? I'll show you just a few little quirky things about this spreadsheet. Number one, I don't know why I started with shift 3. I did this a few days ago, and for the life of me, when I've gone back and looked it over and I'm recording this to explain what's going on, it seems a little odd that I started with shift 3 rather than shift 1 data, but not that that matters at all, but it's just the way this is designed. In shift 3, if I go to the first machine on the first day of shift 3 output, if I click on that cell where in the grid it says 1, 2, 3, in the formula bar it says 1, 2, 3. So I typed this data, just made up some phony numbers, typed them into those cells, and then I really didn't want to have to put a bunch of other numbers, didn't want to have to type everything in. So I came over here and calculated these values. So if you look at the contents of cell C5, which is the scrap output for machine 1 on the first day, I just came up with a reasonable value, I thought, and that value is calculated to be 9% of the total production. So I typed that in, and then I dragged by the fill handle, and the overall effect was I performed a relative copy, did relative cell addressing, and in the process, every cell that I drag into, the row coordinate changes. Okay, so it adapts or changes to the cell that is being copied into. And I did a calculated value here. Here I wrote a formula which calculates 17% of what is in cell B6, okay, and then it adds it to B6. So it has the effect of of making this value be 17% more than what's in cell B6. And I did calculations here, and you can look at that. So all I did was just put in some calculations, drag them down through the columns so I could generate the data very, very quickly, and the data would be, somewhat within what would seem to be a reasonable range of values. As we get over to columns M and let's see, that would be columns H and I. Then I use the sum function, okay? So I can find the sum by using the built-in sum function. Again, you know how to get to the function library, and this particular function, one of many, many, will add things up, perform a summation, and there's many ways I can do that. In this case, because the values that I wanted to sum, because they were not in adjacent columns, then I just listed the columns, the cells where I wanted to calculate the value from, and I separated them with commas. Another way of saying that is each of the three arguments in my that my function is using represents a different cell from a non-adjacent column. All right, so you can study the details of that. If we go to Shift 2, you'll see that things are a little bit different. Again, I calculate these values. If I go over to cell B5, you'll see that's a calculated value, but I'm calculating it based upon a value that's in cell B5 of Shift 3. So I'm actually going over to Shift 3, B5, that value, and then doing a calculation off of it. And once that's computed, then I come over here and I calculate this value as being a percentage of this value, which indirectly is a percentage of this value. Okay, so you can study those computations. So they're going to be, they were convenient for me to use in generating the data. They will be useful for you to be able to study the way I've performed the calculations. I want to show you one other thing. We've talked about relative copies and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go to Shift 3, find a fairly straightforward function here, and you'll notice that it says B5 equals B5 times 0.09. So it's just increasing the value in B5 by 9%. And then because I typed that in and dragged down, this one's going to be the same formula, except it's going to reference B6, same formula, except it references B7. If I had done this instead, going back to that source cell, if I had put in $, then it would have made the cell value constant. It would have locked down that row coordinate. And if that were the case, in this cell where it was originally inserted, there would be no change of value. But when I copy this down, it would copy it down in an absolute way instead of a relative way. And instead of changing that row coordinate, it would lock it at 5 and produce the same value all the way down. Now I'm going to click the undo button and reset things to the way they were. But I just want to point out that, and this is just a matter of trying to be complete with some things that I've said previously. In general, when you copy a formula or a function down a column, the spreadsheet program will change the row coordinate. In general, when you copy a formula or function across a row, the spreadsheet program will change the column coordinate. There are some instances where you might want to override that feature, and you do so by putting a $ in front of the column to lock down the column, or in front of the row to lock down the row, or you can put it in front of the column and the row if you want to. So the $sign is used to lock down a coordinate so that it does not copy in a relative way. All right, I think I've shown you just about everything. So we see production, weekday production, month of August for shift 1 for all 3 machines. Production for shift 2, production for shift 3, and now what you're going to do is set this up so that it shows the total production.
By the time you get to this portion of the video, you'll have an understanding of how a multi-sheet spreadsheet can be constructed, and you'll be familiar with the problem that I'm solving. You know that it involves keeping track of machine production across 3 shifts and during the weekdays of a month. This is the same spreadsheet that I previously demonstrated, and now for your assignment, here's what I want you to do. I want you to change the dates. Okay, so whereas this was constructed in August of 2013, you're going to be redoing this and changing the dates down column A on sheet shift 1, sheet shift 2, and sheet shift 3. You'll have to do it for all 3 sheets. You're going to be changing these dates to the current month. Okay, so if the current month is February, then you will start here and enter in the first date as I demonstrated, and then you'll use the fill series feature to fill down through the remaining rows. And in the event that you're doing this, let's say for February, which is a short month, you will want to delete any of the rows that go beyond February 28th or February 29th, depending upon the year, I suppose. And in order to delete those excess rows, if there are any, if there is a need to delete, you can simply click in the row number on the left edge, choose the delete option, and it will delete. Okay, so I'm not going to actually do that. But I want you to take this spreadsheet, I want you to set it up so that in a subsequent lecture I can show you some more features, and particularly features that relate to the summary page. And in order to be able to demonstrate that, I'm going to need to have you redo this spreadsheet in advance. So before we meet again, make sure that you make those changes.